Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're finally talking about something that has been requested multiple times on this channel, and I had not gotten around to doing it, but today is the day. We're talking about skill fruits, active skills, so on and so forth. What I personally like, what might be better to use on certain pals, so on and so forth. So the one thing that we are going to get out of the way is the skill fruits that you should be using on certain pals. I have a Yormantide Ignis with Legend, Ferocious, Flame Emperor, and Musclehead. This guy is currently running at 1451 attack power, and what we're comparing him to is the Blazehound Knock, which we have Legend, Musclehead, Lucky, and Ferocious. What we're testing in this in particular instance, which I have messed around with this just to double check and everything, is that with Blazehound Knock being Fire and Dark, and the Yormantide Ignis being Dragon and Fire, does that in particular stuff, especially with the Dragon versus the Dark, actually do more damage based off the PAL type? From what I can conclude, this is a factual thing, that it is a percentage up that if you use a certain skill fruit that is the same type on the same type of PAL, then you will be getting more damage from it. The reason why we can show this is because Yormantide, all he has on him is Flame Emperor, but like I said, we're very much even with the attack power here. Flame Emperor only affects fire attacks, and with his partner skill, it only affects fire attacks as well. With the Blazehound Knock, we have literally 3 points off from the attack power, so the attacks aren't going to be far enough off to really notice that much, and they're close enough in power to where they'll be very close if it was not a difference. But he is Fire and Dark, but his partner skill won't affect, neither will his bottom stuff, because I don't have Lord of the Underworld or Flame Emperor on him, which both would work well if you're using fire skills or dark skills. It just depends. So with the Yormantide Ignis, him being Dragon, we have Dragon Cannon on here, right? So we fire that a couple times. We're doing about 2-9, 3-1, 3-1, 3,000. We switch over to the Blazehound Knock with the Dragon Cannon, same cannon. We're only doing 2-5, 2-4, 2-3, 2-3. So there is a percentage difference with that, and the way that we can also show this again is with poison attack. Well, Blazehound Knock being a dark type, he does have the poison blast on him that I put on him. We're doing 3,172, 2,700, 28, I think that was 28 as well. 3,200. Now, if we go back over to the Yormantide Ignis and try Poison Shot, we're doing 2-6, 2-7, 2-4, 2-6. So there is a difference. And also, so that we also know that this isn't a fluke, we put a Stone Blast on here, which is also something that neither one of them carry in their overall elemental status. Doing 4-7-5. 4-9, 4-8, 4-6, 4-7. Switch back over to the Blazehound Knock. We're at 4-6, 4-7, 4-7, 4-6, 4-8. So the damage is very, very close as far as what's going on with that. So there is something to be said that the individual type of elemental PAL that you're using, you should be kind of using those types of elements. Kind of having a jack of all trades is not bad, especially if they are higher in the damage pool, but you are going to get a larger percentage as far as your damage when you start using the same type of attacks with the same type of elemental PAL. So dark with dark, fire with fire, so on and so forth. So what I have done is I have went through and added every attack that is at my disposal as far as the skill fruit ones onto my Frostallion Noct, which is known as Nightmare. It's one of my highest damage output pals that I have, and she's not even all the way up with her attack power. But when I Hookertees stack her with food, then we're reaching about 3,777. So 4 Hookertees maxed out with 20% food increase. Yeah, we're reaching about 3,777. 177. I'm not going to worry about doing that now because I'm going to be switching back and forth between a couple things. But as a base, she is 4-starred and has full souls as well. But this does show the maximum potential attack power that can be out of a Frost Stallion Noct is pretty high. There's not very many pals that can get up to that, up into the higher 3000s margin and close to 4000. I imagine if I did have some skill fruit and I got her up to that, then we might be hitting 4000. Not sure though. I haven't tested it, nor have I tried, because I am out of skill fruits right now. Not skill fruits. I'm out of IV fruits. I have burned them all up on my jet wagons for the raid. Good reason too. So with Frost Stallion Noct, we are going to be getting an enhancement from dark attacks, and because she is dark and we're using dark attacks, they will be at a higher percentage as far as the damage goes. But we're not really looking at that. We are looking at basically the amount of times that you can use it and how quickly you can use it is what we're looking at, and how accurate the actual skill is. Because some of them tend to be kind of wonky, for a lack of a better term. So I guess we'll be starting out with Dark Ball, which is a 40, and we're just going to go down my list here. We're not going to go in any particular order than just what the list is here. So it's kind of a jubilee of everything that's involved here. So with Dark Ball, the attack itself is pretty slow, but it does hit for a significant amount of damage. I'm pretty sure it tracks too. Well, that didn't. Let me go test this on something. Let me see if it tracks. Yeah, it looks like it tracks. So this does track, so you can kind of fire it wherever, and it's going to track and hunt down the in particular stuff. But it is a very slow attack. It looks like it only tracks but so much. Not very good with its tracking because it's just so slow. But eventually we do hit them. So Dark Ball, not really one of my favorites. It does hit hard in some instances and can be used fairly often since it is a 40. But it is a real slow attack. It does somewhat track, but it doesn't track if they start moving quickly. So it being a slow attack, not really suggested. So moving on to Shadow Burst. Shadow Burst is okay because of the frequency in which you can use it. You don't really need to aim with it or anything. You just have to get really close to the in particular target that you're going after in order to hit them with it. It is kind of slow in the usages, and we will be kind of like testing around this. But the one downfall about this is the fact that you have to get in so close, you can't really attack from range. And then once you hit your attack, you're kind of stuck in that position, going to be taking damage, and that's one thing that you want to avoid. So I'm not a big fan of the burst attacks specifically because they don't really do as much damage as what I would consider them to be doing with the risk versus reward kind of aspect of them. Moving on to Dark Laser. Dark Laser is a very powerful attack. It is one of my number ones that I use. Very hard hitting. Bit of a wind up, and you are standing there for a while, but at range, you're not really worried about that because you can hit it from pretty good distance away. One downfall of Dark Laser is the overall ability to spam it. You can't really spam it because it takes a long time to fill back up after usage, but all in all, it hits hard. So again, risk versus reward on this one. Another thing that it does as well is it does kind of stun lock most of the bosses. The power bosses, you're not going to get a stun lock on them, but it does do a significant amount of damage. Slow to rebuild and slow to move out of, as the animation does take a while to get through. But even from something like this, you can hit pretty good. And like I said, a lot of damage. Personally, I like Dark Laser, especially on the back of a Dark Pal. Shadowbeak uses it pretty good, especially when you have Lord of the Underworld under him as well. And his enhancement to Dark is a plus with that. Let's swap in some new attacks. We'll do Air Cannon, Spirit Flame, and Fireball. With Air Cannon, can be spammed really quickly and can be moved out of very quickly. Not exactly the easiest to aim on controller. I'm sure a lot of y'all on PC, this isn't difficult because you guys have a mouse. But all in all, you can spam this attack quite a bit, doing about 3,000 a hit with this. So not bad damage. It is on the lower end, but Air Cannon is pretty decent for the fact that you can spam it and move along really quickly. Very, very short animation for it and very, very short. It doesn't lock you into a lot of things. I personally don't use Air Cannon because I have stronger attacks, and the stronger attacks are better used. Like I said, risk versus reward. You're not getting too much damage out of Air Cannon. So even though you can spam it a lot, lot, you might not wear down the enemy quick enough depending on what you're going for. Spirit Flame, leave it as a breath attack. No, it is not. It just went everywhere right there because everything is in my way right now for some reason. But yeah, Spirit Flame, it's a 3 burst attack. And it apparently does not want to go after the Pangolin. So this is another tracking one, and it tracks a little bit better than, say, Dark Ball. And it usually continuously hones in as well. That Thwack is a, try to hit the one up here. He ain't moving. Okay, those actually track. I guess you do kind of gotta lock onto the target before you actually attack with it. That Thwack is running away like he owes me money. One thing as well is if you are having trouble trying to like get a good lock on the target, is you can use your weapon or even the grapple gun like I have right here to lock onto the target and then use the skill to then hit the target a lot easier. But like that, we can have that. I do not know why that's doing that. The consistency of this is not good. But yeah, you get it. It's not too bad, but it's also not that great. It's at a 75, so the expensiveness of it versus the amount of times that you can really spam it, and of course with the accuracy of it, it is a homing one, but apparently even after doing that a couple different times, it tend to go wherever it wants to whenever it's done. But I guess in a pure battle, it should hone in a little bit better. Not something that I personally use. Moving on to Fireball. This is personally one of my favorite moves. It hits hard, it hits quick, it hits from distance. Downside is it does take a while to rebuild back up. But it does multi-hits, usually setting the target on fire as well. So you will have a percentage. And I think that the caught on fire is based off of a percentage of 1.1. So according to their health is what the percentage is going to be of 1.1%. At least that's the way that it works with the fireplaces. We noticed that while we were doing the Bella Noir exploit. But yeah, Fireball hits really hard from a good distance as well. And the fact that it can catch the target on fire. And it has a multi-hit, and it's kind of an AoE as well. I personally like Fireball because it is a big hit. Moving along. Now we have some of the big boy ones coming out here. Now we're talking about Ignis Rage. Ignis Rage is a 120. I personally don't like using Ignis Rage, even though it is a huge AoE attack. It's good for large groups of pals, but oftentimes that you see that is far and few between. Unless you have the pal appearance rate turned up, then you won't really see too many groups. It also is more effective to stuff that is running on the ground versus something that is flying. It does hit stuff that is flying, and it also bounces them up. But it being an AoE attack, it covers a large ground, but it is random. So there's no way to really hit the target that you're looking for unless it just so happens to be in that blast radius. It is also very slow to rebuild. Not quite as slow as Fireball, but still very slow. As far as its usefulness, I'm not a big fan of it. In certain instances, like I said, it is kind of useful, but at the same time, it's just not as useful as other skills as far as the skill fruit line goes. Like you see, I could attack that and half of that's going to go underground because of the way that it's positioned. So not a big fan. Long lineup, and it's random. You can't really control where it hits. It's just a large AoE attack. Lightning Bolt, about the same as the Dark Laser. You can hit from a pretty decent distance. Bit of a wind up, but good hits all around. Slow to recharge, but with a lightning pal that has Lord of Lightning, then you're going to get a decent amount of damage, especially going after water pals because they are weak to lightning. But it's basically on the same premise as the Pal Blast or dark laser, so on and so forth. I personally like it. I like using it on the Astagon for whenever I'm overworld mining, along with lightning strike, because lightning strike is a huge AoE attack and it covers a large area, but lightning bolt allows you to kind of get everything that's in a line. So the one sulfur place that I go to a lot, which is up here, as you can see here, you have a line more or less than an AoE area where you could cover a lot of it, and this is right really close to a fast travel point, so to get this and overweight yourself and then get back is not too big of a deal. But usually you can line this stuff up after doing like an AoE right here with the lightning strike, and then come over here and hit like those three in a line right there. If you move quick enough, can usually destroy those three, and then you just have two more, and that one right there, the three more, and then you're done as far as mining. A lot of people use dig toys just because it's simpler. You don't have to worry about that stuff. You can just throw them out, let them buzz the stuff, and then pick up the stuff afterwards. I personally use dig toys for when I'm over here, but when it comes to AoE areas, then Astagon is a bit better because he can destroy everything all at once, such as if you need extra metal, this is one place that I liked to go to. Like with the introduction of the metal farm, this is kind of pointless now, but beforehand I would go over here and I would lightning strike and get all this ore up really quickly, and only have to do like one or two to clear out the whole area of ore. And then it being really close to a fast travel, then you could overweight yourself and then grapple hook your way down. I am getting off topic, I apologize. I wanted to touch base on that. All right, next up, Pal Blast, kind of in the same line of dark laser and lightning bolt. Good distance, long recharge, but good damage overall. It's not something that I would use in succession, like have dark laser, Pal Blast, and lightning bolt behind each other, because then you're kind of shooting and then waiting. One thing that a lot of people do when they are on riding pals is that they will shoot their load, essentially, pause, and after they're done doing that on the back, they'll jump off and then let the pal do the three that they have on reserve. For some reason that works, and that's how it is with the recharging. It's like double recharge, especially when you shoot from the back, so that could be useful in its own sense of doing that and then kind of running around and dodging. A lot of people like to use multi-attacks though to kind of keep the damage going versus not, which is also a good thing to do. I personally like using big damage, hard-hitting stuff, that way I get as much damage as possible out and into the pal that I'm going against, and then I can use the remainder of that time to kind of just dodge and weave and run around to dodge their attacks until they recharge, and then go back in for the other attacks, which that kind of helps with healing as well, because once you do those attacks, sometimes you do get stuck in animations to where the target that you're going against does hit you multiple times, and you will get kind of lower on health depending on what you're going against, and then you can back off from that after doing your big attacks, know that their health is down from those big attacks, and then be able to heal yourself back up as you run around and dodge the rest of them. Moving along, some more of the big boy attacks. Moving on to Blizzard Spike. Blizzard Spike is personally one of my favorite ones. It is a 130 recharge, so not quite a 150, but it still hits like the fireball and stuff like that, where it has a direct hit and then an AoE attack, and it can be hit from range. As you can see, does a multi-hit across the board of that and hits pretty hard. This is also usually the first attack with this is going to be an insta-freeze, which will impede the target that you're going after, so you will be able to line up other attacks afterwards. Say that you are riding on a pal that does not have like a weapon such as the Grizzbolt or Jet Dragon, Relaxosaurus, so on and so forth, then you can actually shoot off the back of this at the same time as using the attacks as well, which is useful. But if you're someone that's kind of trying to conserve ammunition, then just have quicker attacks behind that to be able to put those into effect better, or to get more damage quicker, I guess. I personally like Blizzard Spike a lot because it's just a great skill, can be attacked from very far away, and pretty much when it hits and hits hard. Next up, we have Hydro Laser. Like Dark Laser and the rest of them that we've talked about, can be hit from a decent range, and it is a water type attack. That is not what we're doing. Now, speaking with hydro lasers specifically, the way that elemental damage stacking works, as far as we know that works well, is anything that is wrapped in ivy is susceptible to double damage from fire attacks, which is really good. When it comes to water and electricity, they can work both ways. If something's got the electrical effect on it, then it can be hit with water for double damage, or if it has the status of damp, which it's wet and dripping, then you can hit it with electrical attacks or double damage as well. So that's one thing that I see that is almost, I want to say that's underutilized at the moment. Not a lot of people talk about the lightning and water attacks, the fact that they can be reversed, and you can get a lot of damage out of that as well. So hydro laser, in my opinion, is really good for the simple fact that it can be combined with electrical attacks to then get double damage out of it. And if you're hitting them with something hard like hydro laser, then you're going to be getting a lot of damage out of it. It is kind of a niche build depending on what you're using it on. I would suggest probably like a Sezuku Aqua where it has an increase to water damage, or a Yormantide that has also an enhancement to water, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, scratch that. It does not have an enhancement to water. Can be ridden to travel on water while mounted. Prevents stamina depletion while moving over water. So yeah, it actually does not have a enhancement to water. I was wrong about that. I thought that they did, but I know that the Sezuku Aqua does, which this is where kind of your Emperor or Lord of come into play. Like Lord of the Sea with the Sezuku Aqua with its enhancement to water attacks would be devastating, running with an electrical attack to hit first to apply the electrical effect on POW that you're going against. Next up, we have Dragon Meteor. Now, Dragon Meteor used to not hit at all hardly when you were using it off the back of it. They have fixed this to where now it actually does hone in, but it still is kind of weird in some instances. It does hit from a good range and it is dragon damage. And like, I don't know why. I mean, I'm aiming directly at it and it just did not hit like more than half of those. See if we can do it better closer. So yeah, I'm not sure about this attack, why it's not like hitting all of those. Like it should be doing an AoE when it hits as well. So as far as riding on the back of a PAL and using that in particular attack, it's not that great still, even though it does hone in a little bit better. It's better utilized just by the PAL when they're running separate from you. So like Jet Dragon, using it when you're not riding them is just better overall. A lot of the dragon attacks could be utilized with a dragon type PAL, and then with most of the dragon types, you're not going to be getting too much damage out of them just for the simple fact that there's not any dragon boosters. But when you have something like a Yormantide Ignis or a Relaxosaurus Lux, dragon types that have a secondary element is where you can stack behind them. So with Yormantide Ignis, you could use Kelpsie Ignis or Rubies to boost them up even further with their attack damage, because it's specifically for fire pals, and since it is fire and dragon, those dragon attacks will be doing more damage because it is an overall attack buff versus the elemental type buff, or it's the elemental type of PAL, but it's boosting their attack power specifically. And Rubies and Kelpsies are the same, and that goes for all of the booster type PALs. Gobfins for you, it's 20%. Your Rib Bunnies, your Bristols, Dewmuds, Foxicles, Kelpsie Ignis, Rubies, Sparkets, they're all 20% at max. Once they're at 4-star, they start out at 10% per, and they can stack as well. So that's the good thing about them. Usually when I'm using a PAL on the ground, I'm using only 3 stacked behind it because I want a flyer to be able to get around to wherever I'm going to attack. If you're going after tower bosses, it's more feasible to quadruple stack behind them because very short distance to all the towers. Don't have to like go through a huge trip on any of the towers themselves. This one's right beside a one. You got Victor and them, they're really close together. Even the one in the desert, all of them are like really close to a fast travel point. So it's more feasible to quadruple stack with you going into those instead of something like going after Paldius and Necromus, where this in particular fast travel point doesn't work that well. And you have to go from here or here, one of the two, and you got to go over this mountain. And it's a huge traverse. So it's better to just have a flying PAL. Or if you're going after Jet Dragon, when you spawn out here, that's like the closest one. This one's not too far away, but it's still not that bad. But there's just like a huge traverse traversing over a huge mountainside that's right here up into this place, and you got to go over a wall as well just to get over there. That's why I only like triple stack if I'm going against like if I am using a grounded type PAL, I guess the way that I would describe it, something that can only run on the ground and not fly. But yeah, Dragon Meteor in general, not a big fan of, especially using it off the back of it. But with the other PAL, or with you using it as an auto attack from that PAL, then it works a lot better. I don't know why, but it's still that way. Moving along. So lock-on laser is a 70, so it can be spammed not that fast, but fairly quickly. Usually the ones at 70 can be rotated pretty quickly if you use them in succession. That's why, like, using the Fell Bat with all the breaths when you're doing Ice Breath, the Fire Breath, and the Dragon Breath, those are easily rotated and can be used continuously. One downside about lock-on laser is that it is a very small attack and you are stuck just as long as you would be using like Pow Blast or any of the other laser lock-ons, but it's a lot less damage. As you can see, it is off on the accuracy. We'll see if we can hit this. I think you got to aim above it, because that's 2 times that I've hit low. Nope, that time it hit dead on. Just below it. So yeah, as you can see with that in particular one, not very accurate, and it is a very pinpoint shot. It is no AoE to it. It can be quickly used, but at the same time, the amount of time that you have to stand there is abysmal. And I can't hit anything with it. So yeah, for that much of a charge time, that actually could be longer than the Pow Blast or other dark lasers, so on and so forth like that. So that could be a longer one, but even though it is a 70, it's just not that great in my opinion. Lightning Strike. Lightning Strike is very, very good, especially as we had described before with elemental damage stacking specifically. You can get a lot of damage out of this. It is an AoE, so whenever you hit it, you got a very large area that you're covering, and it hits everything in that area for a pretty good amount of damage. Very useful for mining with Astagon. It's one of the best moves to use with Astagon because he could take out like every rock in one hit. Pretty impressive. But as far as usages against pals, it's useful as well, especially if you're like, you know, Godfin farming, which you really don't have to do that anymore. If you got a decent gold farm going up, you can buy the PAL fluid and high quality PAL oil now. And if necessary, which I have been doing here lately, is I throw in a couple of my kelp seeds into the ranch and let them produce passive PAL fluid. And I had them 4-starred anyway because that's what I was using to bring up the attack power of water pals that I was using at the time, or at least preemptively did that. It also being a 120, so it's not quite as long to spool back up compared to the 150s and stuff. And just a good AoE attack. Don't necessarily have to be close, but you got to be within range. It hits hard. Good stuff. Moving on to Iceberg. This is something as well, kind of like in the realm of Rock Lance. Iceberg's kind of the same way. It's an attack from the ground. It hits not that hard, kind of a weak shot with that in particular skill. It comes back pretty quickly. It's a 70, so you could have a couple of these on backdrop if you really wanted to. So it's a quick little spam, but it does take a while with the animation itself to get out of it after you do present it. So not something that I personally use that much, because especially if you're going against a pal that's moving a lot, once you target it and you hit that, that's it. That's where it's going to hit. Like, you can't move it around where they're moving to. Moving along, Plasma Tornado. Unlike the other ones that are tornadoes, this is not a tornado. It is in fact a multi-shot. It kind of goes where it wants to. It does target the pal, but usually it goes over their head. Every time that I've used this, and I'm not sure if they've fixed it since, like, I don't even know what that's going after. This is the closest thing that I should be targeting. Like it goes straight out from where it is. It does not go down. What is going on here? You guys ain't supposed to be coming out of here. Look, I hit it finally. That was weird. I've never seen them come out like that. Nonetheless, yeah, plasma tornado, not recommended. It's random. It only fires like straight out. It doesn't hone in like it should. It fires wherever it wants to, clearly. And it's not what I was thinking it was going to be when I first originally used it. I thought it was going to be a tornado of lightning, but it is not. It is not a good thing. So if they fix that in the future, it could be better, but as of right now, not good. Bubble Blast. Bubble Blast seems like it isn't that great because it is a slower attack type, but I'm gonna hone in on this flak over here. It's a lot faster than the Dark Ball, and it does a decent amount of damage too. It also inflicts the wetness or damp. So it will proc damp to make them wet to then attack them with lightning. So that's one thing that's really good about it. It does hone in on targets and it does it very well. Has decent range, not the greatest, but all in all, it's not a bad ability. Some people don't like it, some people like it. I personally don't mind it. If I'm trying to look for something that is a quicker attack, as it being a 65, it will recharge pretty quickly and you can proc dampness from it, and using heavier electric attacks will then just prove its worth there, right then and there. Aqua Burst. Unlike Fireball, it does not do multiple shots after it hits, which I am a little sad about that, but it does hit hard. And there's something is to be said again, once again, talking about the elemental damage stacking. If you proc electric on them and you use that, it's going to hit them pretty hard. So I like that one. All right, moving along to Spine Vine. Now, Spine Vine hits pretty good, but it is kind of the same way Rock Lance and Iceberg are. Like, once you have the target in there, like say that it's over here and it wants to move like where that is, and you're aiming at it and you go to fire, you can kind of move along with it. So that is one advantage versus the Iceberg and Rock Lance, because Rock Lance's stuff, once you hit where you want it to land, then that's where it's going to land. But with Spine Vine, you can kind of move along with your target. So if you start targeting over here and then you move over there after you hit, then it will go after where it's going to hit. Okay, that's weird. Nonetheless, Spine Vine also procs Ivy Cling, but it is kind of a one-use thing. It is a 95, so it's a little bit longer than what I would like to use for a grass attack to try to keep that procced for fire damage. So not necessarily one of my favorites, but can be used. Next up, Grass Tornado. These are always my favorite types because they do a lot of damage. They usually knock the target that you're going after up in the air, preventing them from attacking, or at least preventing them from really moving the direction that they want to be. It will proc Ivy Cling. There's just a number of things that the Grass Tornado or any of the tornadoes really do that are really good for it. Plus, it's a very quick attack in comparison to some of the other ones that are heavier hitters. It is an 80, so you can pretty much have that going quite a few times, especially. And the fun thing about this one is that it actually goes where you want it to. And they usually cross center, so as you can see, the Crimus out there, it might not hit it. Nope, just shy of it. So the range on it is a little shorter, but at the same time, like when you're doing that, you're pretty close onto them anyway. Not point blank. You don't want to be point blank because then you're not getting like the full effect. I feel like if you're point blank like this and you launch that, you will hit them. Actually for a decent amount of damage, so I was wrong about that. So yeah, you can even do it point blank range. So you are limited on range as far as like how far you can go out from it, but all in all, good attack. I like the tornadoes. I like the Grass Tornado, especially with it being able to proc Ivy Cling, so that's a really good one. Power Bomb. Kind of like the Water Ball or whatever it's called. Agua Burst. Kind of like that. Doesn't take too long. To 70, so it can be done in rotation as well, and it is a neutral attack, so better used on neutral pals, but it hits pretty hard. Pretty good attack, nothing to scoff at. I like it. I don't use it that much because I don't really use neutral pals that often, but it is a good attack. All right, Tri Lightning. Tri Lightning can be useful. It is a 3-hit. So wherever you're aiming at, it will hit the next one wherever you're tracking. So if something is moving and you can kind of lead it off, not too shabby. It's a 90, so it's a slow to bring back. It doesn't hit that hard. Not something that I personally use that often, just because it's can be kind of annoying to deal with. But if you get used to it, it's not that bad. There are worse skills. And again, proccing damp, you're going to get more damage out of that. And with damp, they're going to be slowed. So not by much, but they will be slowed a bit. Draconic Breath, which is the dragon breath that I was talking about. Also a really good one. You're limited on range, but at the same time, you will be hitting for a decent amount of damage. The breaths are also really good for the simple fact that they can be used in quick succession. If you have 3 of them on, Felbat is really useful for that, especially going with tower bosses, because she can re-heal herself very quickly by using those, because it's just continuous damage. I personally don't use much of the breaths, maybe Ignis Breath, because it can be utilized with a Ivy Cling to get more damage out of it, but you are kind of with a bit of a slower animation and stuck there while you're doing the whole breath. But it's accurate and it's not gonna not do damage, which is good. So like I said, there could be worse ones, and it is a good attack. Moving on to Flare Storm. Flare Storm is the fire tornado. I personally love Flare Storm because, again, same thing with the Grass Tornado. Knocks them up in the air sometimes, does pretty consistent damage, is accurate, and in combination with Ivy Cling, you're going to be doing more damage. So, and it's a very quick one as well, it being in the 80 category. Moving along. One thing that we will not be talking about in this in particular episode, because we're talking about just the fruits, what could be applied to the PAL off of the fruits that you get. I don't want to really get into exclusive skills because we'll be here all day talking about that stuff. So when I do an in particular PAL that does have an exclusive skill, I will be going into more depth of how that might be better versus some other things. But for right now, we're focusing on the active fruit skills that can be applied on anything. Ice Missile. It's a decent attack, kind of slow with the animation, but can be used quite a few times. It can be inaccurate at times on smaller targets, as we have seen here. But when it does right, it does right. Again, a little bit of a slower animation, can proc Frozen, and it, like I said, it can be used in quick, oh, that ain't what I want to do. Quick succession. And usually they hit, and they're accurate for wherever you're pointing at them. Sand Tornado. Again, another one that I like, but not necessarily extremely useful, considering that the other tornadoes that we talked about can be used to proc certain things to get more damage out of the stuff, such as Grass Tornado and Flare Storm. But all in all, not a bad attack at all, especially if you're going against something like an electric type. Nightmare Ball. Nightmare Ball, like the other balls, hits hard, hits fast, and is accurate. Kind of like Power Bomb or Fireball. The difference is Nightmare Ball is 100 when Fireball is a 150 because it has a lot more. Fireball has like an AoE to it once it does hit. With Nightmare Ball, it really doesn't, but it's one of the hundreds, so it's not too slow, but it's also not the fastest in recharging, but it does hit hard enough to where it can be utilized with that. I personally like Dark Ball, or Nightmare Ball, not Dark Ball, Nightmare Ball, because of how quickly it can be hit and be able to move around and do other attacks as well while waiting on that one to recharge. Moving along. This is going to be a long video. Power Shot, 35. Again, another one that can be spammed pretty quickly and be able to move out of fairly quickly as well. Not a huge wind up to it. And hits for pretty decent damage. It's kind of like a peck you to death kind of situation. Like, I'm not doing that much damage, but I could do a lot of it pretty quickly. With accuracy and moving, if I'm accurate, but I'm not. But the fact that it can be brought back so quickly is something to be said about that. So it's a quick attack, something to keep stuff going. Now, Dragon Cannon is a 30 instead of a 35, so it can be done a little quicker. And the animation for it is super quick. And it is a bit of an AoE. Out of all the dragon attacks that are on the board that are not an exclusive, this is probably one of my favorites just because of how quickly it can be hit. It does pretty good damage and you don't have to stay in there long. Be rapid fired very quickly. So that's something that I personally like a lot. Power Shot is 5 more points than it. And it is a longer animation to do so, unlike the Dragon Cannon. And Dragon Cannon, like I said, it's kind of got a little bit of an AoE to it when it does hit. We're hitting there, but we're also hitting the Tangle-It, even though that we're not hitting right beside of it. So accuracy isn't a complete necessity for it because it does hit with an AoE attack. Small AoE, but still an AoE nonetheless. Lightning Streak, not to be confused with Lightning Strike. Kind of a straight line shot. It is a 75, so a little bit longer to get through. But it being a straight line, you can usually hit your target pretty easily, even if you're not aiming directly at them. And the wind-up for it's not too long. Enough to justify it being used with combination with water attacks to get stuff damp. Moving along. Getting into some of the smaller, quicker attacks here. Wind Cutter, Grass Attack. Very quick to let off. And can be fired multiple times. And if you hit something enough times with that, that will in fact proc Ivy Cling. May take a couple of hits, but I mean, you can hit, run, hit, run, hit, run until they're clinged and then run a fire attack behind them. But yeah, Wind Cutter, some people might like shy away from, but at the same time, pretty good attack radius on the actual attack. Not too bad. And like I said, it will proc Ivy Cling. So if you're able to like run around and just kind of peck at them until they proc that and then use your heavier fire attack, then that's something that you could do as well. So not a bad move, very quick to use, very quick to get out of, and very quick to come back. Seed Mine, one of my personal favorites. Main reason for that is that when it does... I'm wrong, that is not Seed Mine, that is Seed Machine Gun. So Seed Machine Gun does hit a pretty good amount, but the range on it is not that great. So you have to be kind of close for it to do any real damage. Because I wasn't even that far away from it. It wasn't doing anything. That's about how close you got to be for it to really do any damage. And the fact that you got to stand there the whole time, it's almost like one of the breaths, but it is quicker to come back as it being only a 50. But I personally don't like the machine gun because you just got to get too close for it to be useful. And it will proc, like any of the ones that I'm talking about that are procking Ivy Cling or procking dampness or stuff is just going to be the attack type that it is. It will proc them, some proc them quicker than others as far as the overall abilities and moves. Wind Cutter will take a lot longer than say Seed Mine, just because Seed Mine has an AoE effect where it covers the ground with a bunch of mines, and each one of those that they run over, including the main one that you do throw at the target, will hit and have a chance to proc the Ivy Cling. So when they run over top of the mines or when they're running through them and they start exploding, each one of those is a chance for that to be proc. So Seed Machine Gun, not the greatest. Got to be too close. Not really a fan of that. Aqua Gun. Another quick one. That could be shot multiple times and then move. Or shot a time and then move. Shot a time and move. And it comes back fairly quick. It is a 40, so a little bit higher up on the board than most of the quicker attacks. So you are standing there like a little bit longer than you would with like Wind Cutter or something like that, or Dragon Cannon. But it still does a decent amount of damage for what it's worth. And again, something that you could use to proc dampness while tapping around, and then run up on them when they are damp and use lightning strike or lightning bolt to do a lot more damage, to do 2 times damage. So unlike aqua gun, hydrojet is a 10 point less to recover with and is a lot faster to proc, or a lot faster to use rather. And you can get out of the animation a lot quicker rather than stand there for a while. Same thing can be used with this as you can with the aqua gun as well, to proc dampness and do so on and so forth. Seed mine, personal favorite here. Like I said before, you do shoot out the main seed. Once it hits, covers a large area. And then any of these, they do explode after a certain amount of time, but once they do, it's very quick to get them back up because, I mean, you just shoot it again. And if you hit directly, it's going to be more damage, but then all these other little ones do a significant amount of damage as well. And each one of those mines have a chance to proc Ivy Clean. As you see that right there. 1 attack, 2 dead. And we could do it as like an in-between thing too. Say that we got those 3 right there. Shoot this up, let it hit. Covers an area. Up, there's 2. There's 3. So yeah, seed mine I like using a lot, especially with higher end fire skills, because 1, it can be thrown out a lot quicker. It covers a large area, and even with it covering a large area, the seed itself does have direct damage as well. Unlike Ignis Rage, where it's kind of a random sporadic spread of fire and it's just luck or not if it hits or not. Seed mine, you can kind of at least direct the first shot, and that will usually proc an Ivy Cling, and then you have a chance on the other ones to proc it at some point again, or if it doesn't get with the first initial seed, then it will probably proc off of the ones whenever they go running through the minefield. A lot of little hits, a lot of little damage, but very quick to come back. It is a 65, so it's fairly quick for what it is. Acid Rain, kind of a niche little thing. Some people say that it procs poison. I'm sure that it procs dampness, but it does do a significant amount of damage. We'll actually test this out real quick, because this is one that a lot of people say certain things about, but might not be necessarily true. So it being a water attack, it did proc dampness, you can tell that. But it did not proc a poison or an acid burn to him at all. Not from what I can see. Yeah, no acid burn from him. So that's one thing specifically. I've heard people say that acid rain procs like an acid burn or a poison, and it just doesn't. Not what I've seen from what I've used it and everything. It does hit hard, but it is a slow attack and slow to bring out. Not too bad as far as usage goes for how quickly it comes back, but it is something that you got to kind of stand there and do. So the animation for it is pretty long. Like I said, the risk versus reward in this instance is sometimes good. If you're just trying to proc dampness, then I wouldn't use that. I would use a faster attack to proc the dampness, because at that point you're not looking for the damage itself, but you're looking for the elemental weakness vulnerability, I guess is the way, the vulnerability to come over them. But yeah, acid rain can be used in succession with like an electrical attack. So if you use like a smaller electrical attack to then proc the electric effect, then put acid rain on them, then they're going to be doing a lot more damage. Acid rain does proc dampness pretty quickly and fairly often, even for it to be like a lower end attack. It just takes a long time for it to come out. It is an 80, so not lower, I'd say a mid. It is what it is. Not bad, not good, right in the middle. Use it if you want. If you don't bother. There are better ones, but there are worse ones. All right, Ignis Blast. Again, another very quick, speedy little attack. For some reason is not doing damage to the pinglet, even though I'm hitting him dead on with this. Okay, there it is. Yeah, I was gonna say, didn't want to proc on the pinglet there for a minute, but it does do damage, so it's not like this is just broken or something. For some reason it just doesn't want to activate on that. But yeah, very quick attack, very useful. Again, combined with grass attacks, you're going to be doing a decent amount. Not extremely useful in the instance that it does create a burn effect. So that is somewhat useful, but even with it being a quicker attack, you usually want your grass attacks to be the faster attacks and use your fire attacks as the longer, more hard-hitting attacks. So smaller fire attacks can be used. It's not bad. At least it's accurate. It hits, and it's quick to use and quick to get out of. So early game, I'd say this is a very useful thing. Late game, once you start getting some decent fruits, then I would say this is not exactly the most useful thing. Ignis Breath. As we have discussed with the breaths already, it is very useful, very quick to get back, especially if you're running all 70s or lower. You can pretty much use that, go back into rotation, use something else, and by the time that you're done through your rotation, you can come back to that one for a decent amount of damage. I don't like how the breaths make you kind of just stand there, and with Draconic and Ignis Breath specifically, you're only proccing a burn to them. Draconic Breath does the same thing as Ignis Breath as far as being able to proc a burn. Crystal Breath, you actually will proc a freeze, which is a little bit more useful because then they're standing there while you're doing it and not opening up to attacks when you are doing that. As far as the breaths go, I prefer Crystal Breath over all of them. But all in all, again, not bad. It hits. You got to be close, but not that bad. Now, Flare Arrow. This one is a bit weird. I like it and I hate it sometimes. It is fairly long with its animation, and it does do 3 strikes. Pretty quick to come back. It's only a 55, but on some pals, it just does not react correctly. I don't know why that is. They may have fixed that since the update. I have not really checked with the other pals that I had it on. Take a look here. This is one where it was doing weird stuff with. Okay, it shoots straight pretty much out of that. But I've used it on like smaller to the, like lower to the ground pals that are smaller, and sometimes it just hits the ground for some reason. I don't know why that is. I don't know if that's fixed. It looks like it might be because it was doing it with the Blaze Howl, so that might be fixed. So if that is fixed, it is a lot more useful than not. But beforehand, I would have it be shot out and it would just hit the ground directly in front of me instead of actually going out and attacking stuff. So that was really weird. And it is a bit of a tracking one, at least. So that is a plus. At least I think it tracks. It doesn't hone in, but it does track a little bit when you fire it. Make sure I'm not telling lies here. Okay, maybe it doesn't. Maybe it did. Well, let's see. I'm going to aim over here, see if it goes straight or if it actually goes after the Lift Monk. Okay, yeah, it goes straight. So it doesn't hone in or target. Moving along. Spirit Fire. This one I used a lot, especially early game. Takes a little bit longer to come back up than some of the quicker ones, and you are kind of standing there in the animation a little bit longer. But when it hits, it hits. And it's kind of like a shotgun instance, like a slug to a spread. So when you do fire it at a pal, depending on where they are in proximity of the shot, you really don't have to be as accurate with this as you would think. You can fire it out. It is a bit slower, but it does spread out at the end of its shot when it gets close to the pal that it's going to hit. As you see there. So yeah, it's kind of got like a little bit of a shotgun burst to it at the end of it. And it hits pretty hard. For a low-end attack, it's pretty decent. I've enjoyed it, even though it is a slower attack. It is a fire attack. So again, like we said, elemental damage stacking. Keep that in mind. Shockwave. Yep, one of the burst ones again. Again, something that I'm not too fond of. But this one is a 40, so it comes back pretty quickly. So combined with water, might be pretty decent to use. Not exactly the greatest damage from it, but at the same time, you know, comes back quick enough. The only thing that I really don't like about it is the fact that you have to be so close to proc it, and you're getting into basically direct hit, like no chance to dodge whatever attacks coming at you. And it does take a little bit to go through the animation of it. Spark Blast. I actually don't mind this one because it does have a wide spread to it. So you could proc that electricity on something pretty easily by doing this in rapid succession, especially since you can hit it quite a few times. It's very quick to come back. Animation is a bit long, and it does have a pretty wide spread, so range with it is not going to be your best advantage. But if you're fairly decently close, I mean, you'll hit them with something, or it could just go straight through them like that. But as you see, it really doesn't do too much damage. But to proc the electricity and then hit them with a water attack would be actually pretty useful. So Spark Blast, not that bad, not that great. Again, something is kind of niche, but I personally don't use it. So Electric Ball. It's a 50, kind of slow. Not sure if it hones. I don't think it does. I think it just kind of goes straight out wherever you attack from. Let's see. No, it does kind of hone in. It's slow though, so you got to make sure that you're attacking with that on something that is also very slow. And it's a 50, so it takes a little bit to get up. But it does hit, not too shabby. I'm personally not a fan of Electric Ball because of how slow it is. It's kind of like the same thing with Dark Ball. Stone Cannon. Oh, so it does have like an after effect to it. Stone Cannon, another thing that I really don't use that often, so I don't know too much about it, but it appears when it is fired, the stone does roll and create damages wherever it's rolling as well, not just the initial hit. But it is kind of niche. Again, it's a 70, so for a 70, I don't think it's worth it that much in my opinion. Could hit hard on electric pals, but there are better dirt ones anyway, or ground attacks. Sandblast. Sandblast actually procs that mud dripping thing, which we have not figured out what increases the damage to. I can only assume that it would be electricity. You know what? We could test that right quick, because I'm thinking the way that it drips off of you, that it's kind of like a dampness effect to it. So I could only assume that electricity would be the only thing that would logically actually work against it, because we've tried grass attacks against it and everything, and it didn't work in the last time when we did video on elemental damage stacking, which I'll put at the end of this video just if you guys are interested in that. Let's see if we can proc this mud dripping. Oh, he has got mud on him now. Hard to see, but yeah, it doesn't seem like it did anything. Yeah, it's still 200 across the board. So yeah, unfortunately, the mud drippage, we have yet to figure out what that is actually proccing, which I've done quite a few tests on it and still can't figure it out. Maybe it's just something that isn't implemented yet, or something that is soon to come as an effect, because it does proc that in particular, like sticky mud dripping off of them. I'm not sure exactly what it does. I don't think it impedes their movement or anything. It's just like it is an effect, like, oh, they're muddy. But yeah, Sandblast, as we seen, it's quick, kind of a lob, not the greatest because there's not really anything else that can be procced off of it, but a quick attack nonetheless. So Stone Blast is kind of the same concept as it's Ignis Blast? No, Ignis. There's just so many of these. Spirit Fire, but I think it's just a wide shot. Yeah, it's a straight like shotgun. It's not like a bundled up slow moving target and then spreads out. It's just a straight shotgun. So all in all, it's got a good spread. It's a 55, so that's in line with the other one, but the other one's a little bit more focused, like target focus. This one's more of a wide spread, so for multiple enemies, I'd say this is not bad, but at the same time, it is brown, so it's not that great. Icicle Cutter. This right here, I believe, is really good. For what it's worth, it's a 55, and it has a very wide target area. So when you do shoot it out, ends up hitting a lot of stuff there. Or at least if something moves, then you don't have to be dead accurate with it, like with a lot of the ball attacks. And this one also will proc a frozen attack, will proc freezing. So they'll turn into an ice cube and they won't be able to move. Crystal Breath. Unlike the other breaths between Draconic and Ignis, they are a 90, or it's a 90, they are a 70. So it is a 20 point difference as far as the return. The reason for that is because you can freeze them with it. That's something to be said as well. So Poison Blast. It's kind of like the ground version, but this can be set quite a few times, and it does proc a poison tick to it, so it does have an after effect. Does do pretty good damage for what it's worth. It is kind of like a short range lob, but it does proc a poison, and it will tick away at their health. Dragon Burst, just like the other bursts, I personally don't like them because of how close you have to be in, and they do take a while to come back, and they do take a while to initiate as far as the overall animation of it. Solar Blast. Now this is the grass version of the Dark Laser or something to that, or something like that, so on and so forth. So for a grass attack, it is pretty hard hitting for what it's worth, but it is a 150 as far as its recharge. And like I had said before, you're usually looking for quick grass attacks combined with larger fire attacks when you're using those. But if you're going against something that's ground and you're not particularly using heavier attacks or something like that, it's a good attack. It's something that's strong and something that is going to rip through them pretty quickly. Like I said, I'm kind of biased as far as the small versus large attacks as far as damage goes, because the more damage that you're doing, it leaves you time to kind of maneuver around the subject and so on and so forth, versus using smaller attacks, which do help out in certain instances, but personally I like bigger attacks. So that's one that I've used but don't use often. But yeah, we'll go back over to Blazemut just to show that this poison does proc. I had showed this in the elemental video, but we will show it again here. But yeah, you can see there, instantly got the poison proc to him. So it's not bad. We have Rock Lance. We had mentioned Rock Lance before. We were just now showing it, but it's kind of like Iceberg, where wherever you target, that's where it's going to hit. And it hits for an okay amount of damage, but for the amount of time that it takes to come back, I don't find it to be worth it. That, and it can't be really procced with anything else. So that one, not really that useful to me. It is in certain instances, but I don't personally use it. And last but not least, Implosion. Now this right here is interesting to say the least. Yeah, would not suggest using that while riding on the POW. Most of the time when it comes to those types of attacks like Implosion or Megaton Explosion or Implosion, those you want to be used on sacrificial stuff like the Toko, or what a lot of people have been doing here lately, they've been using it on the Gory Rat. Reason with that being is that if you do have a really good one, which I'm going to show this kind of as a display. So what most people are doing with the Implosion or the Megaton Explosion that you get off of the Toko bird is that they breed it into a Gory Rat. Now the reason why they do it with the Gory Rat is because you can breed down Celestial Emperor, which will give you a 20% attack increase to neutral damage. Megaton Explosion being a neutral damage type. After we got him with a Rib Bunny, 4-stack, and a 20% food increase, we're sitting at 1,974. Now the main reason why they're doing it on the Gory Rat is because once you get his partner skill up to level 5 or 4-star, you throw him out and activate this. He is now doing 3,553 attack power, which is pretty crazy. They must have changed something with this because I was getting 4,000 plus damage out of it. So there is something to be said about that. I'm not sure exactly what they did, but that in particular damage got lowered. But when you activate that and then have him sent out with the Megaton, then he does quite a bit of damage, which we will demonstrate here.
Yeah.
There it is. So yeah, with that being done, you can pretty much one-hit the Blazemut. As you saw, we went from 0 to 100 real quick. So that's what most people are using that for. Is that good? It's niche, not something that I personally use. Is it fun? Yeah. So yes, we went over every skill fruit that I know of, at least, that we could possibly test. Showed all the fun stuff that you can do with them and the stuff that's like not so good, but really what you should be looking for in certain instances. We also showed how using skill fruits on matching PAL elemental types is going to be more beneficial than not, even though that they don't say that they have an increase to the damage. It does show after our testing with that it does do an increased damage. It might be 10%, maybe a little bit lower, but we've seen that it is more damage. So more damage, better numbers, so on and so forth. And I'm sure that it is not a flat number. It's a percentage, as most of the things are in this, so it can be buffed up pretty high. When it comes to most of the moves, realistically, what I would personally focus on is stuff that can be used in double damage scenarios. So any of the fire and grass and any of the water and electric, you're going to be pretty good off with. Dark is just a strong attack in general, especially with some of the more exclusive skills like Divine Disaster off of Shadow Beak is just an absolute shred machine. Those of you who had done the whole tower boss thing and got Dark Wisp and passed that around between pals, I'm sure that's a hard-hitting one as well. It's multiple dark balls at that point. And between ice and dark, which between the Frost Stallion and Frost Stallion Noct is really pretty good to use as well, since they offer an enhancement to those elements as well as increasing the damage that you do off of the back of them with weapons as well. Anything that is solo dragon is going to be weak in comparison to any other PAL. Like the Quivering, even though it does have an enhancement to dragon skills when riding on the back of it or dragon attacks, it's still going to be weaker than using something like a Yormantide Ignis in place as far as the overall damage, because it can be buffed by the fire type that it is, and it's not going to be specific to the fire type damage. It's just the fire type PAL that it is boosting its overall attack power with, so you're going to get better damage out of it anyway. But there is also something to be said with the higher damage type PAL, such as Frost Stallion Noct, and now with Bella Noir out, she does a pretty good bit of damage once you max her out as well. I think at 100 IV she's doing 3,800 with food and Hooker Tea stacked behind her as well, which is on par with the Frost Stallion Noct. I think the Frost Stallion Noct might be able to press more out because of the overall fact that you can have legend on them. That's one disadvantage, but even without legend, it's hitting a lot more damage than you would expect it to be, so that is a plus. But yeah, as far as ground, I really don't see it being used that often, and it's not that great of an attack in general. When it comes to electric, it's good with water is good with electric. With the vice versa of proccing, it's the weakness on a certain power, so on and so forth. Same can be said with fire and grass. Them separate though, fire is probably your strongest bet when it comes to any of the passives or any of the active skills that you're looking at, because fire damage is two different things between grass and ice, and it's just a hard-hitting thing in general, and it also can proc burn, which is a tick advantage at that point with it having damage over time. As far as neutral, like I said, it's kind of niche. It's not strong against anything. The only thing that it's weak against is dark, so you could use that as well. Not a bad option. But yeah, between, I'd say anything that's just straight dragon, anything that's using dirt skills and neutral skills kind of fall short compared to most of the other skill types, just because of the damage elemental stacking that you can do off of the other ones, and the overall damage of dark being a very strong and has a lot of strong attacks with it as well, and ice being something that can impede, or yeah, with ice being something that can impede movement. Neutral really doesn't have anything for that, neither does ground. That could change, which I'm hoping that it does eventually, because ground's kind of lacking. Same with dragon. Dragon needs buffer pals, or booster pals rather, so they can kind of come up to par, especially with like something like Quivering. If they came out with a dragon specific booster pal, then I think Quivering would be up there in the top, especially with its enhancement to dragon skills. Put that with Divine Dragon, thing's gonna be ripping some stuff to shreds, but it just falls short with the absence of booster pals. So yeah, this was a very long video. It's gonna take even longer for me to edit, so I hope that you enjoyed it. If you guys enjoyed the video, drop a like. If you guys enjoy my content, drop a sub and leave a comment down below. What is your favorite combination of active skills? Other than that, keep your willy washed, and we'll see you guys on the next one. Peace out.